What's up, everybody? It's Lee. You're back for another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Got a great guest today, Larry Sprung, who's a wealth and financial manager and advisor. We realized we never have done a show about kind of financial literacy or financial health within hockey. And I'll tell you what, this turned out to be just another fantastic conversation. We got some tips, tricks, and hacks for you as a hockey parent, and also getting a larger discussion of, how to make the game more affordable, and does it really need to be as expensive as it is? Anyway, great conversation. We know you're going to love it. So check out this episode with Larry Sprung. Also want to let you know and remind you that we partnered up with worldhockeyhub.com. If you're a hockey manager or you know a hockey manager, which all of us do, take a look at this website, worldhockeyhub.com. It's a great place to see rankings, but also find tournaments and other places where your team can play this upcoming season. Again, had conversations with them one-on-one. They contacted us. Really like the way that they do their business. I really like the way that they're running it. They kind of have the same morals that we do. So check them out at worldhockeyhub.com. And without further ado, make sure to enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Remember, if you like it, subscribe, like, follow, whatever the buzzword is, wherever you're at. 5-star reviews. It really does help us out. We really do appreciate it, and how much this audience grows week to week. So here we go with this episode. Enjoy it. And I will talk to you before the next episode, or you'll hear me in about 5 seconds start this episode. Here we go. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined, as always, by Christy Casciano-Burns and Mike Benelli, my very good friends. And we are pleased to be joined today by both a hockey lifer and the founder and wealth advisor at Mitlin Financial, Larry Sprung. Larry is also the host of Mitlin Money Mindset, a podcast that's all about getting your mind right when it comes to all things money. And he has appeared on numerous podcasts and in the media, speaking most recently on CNBC about money and parenting, something we're going to be diving into today for sure as hockey parents. Larry grew up playing hockey, starting with the Little Rangers, which is part of the reason he's a big New York Rangers fan. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point today. And Larry played for North Rockland High School and went on to play college for Binghamton University. And most recently, Larry played in hockey fundraising events for Team Israel. That sounds exciting. I want to talk about that too. Everything in this intro I want to talk about. One of Larry's passions is raising awareness also for mental health. He spent over 12 years serving on the national board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and sits on its financial and investment committees. With his wife, Denise, he has raised more than $1.7 million for the organization through the Keith Milano Memorial Fund, which was created in memory of his brother-in-law. Larry is a level 4 USA hockey coach and is above all a hockey dad to 2 boys who both love the game. Larry, we've got a ton to discuss with you today, but first, let's welcome you to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Hey, thanks for that great introduction, Lee. Nice to see you, Lee, Mike, and Christy. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for including me today.
No, it's really our pleasure, and we're really excited to dive into you on really so many fronts. There's a lot we want to go over here. For those of you listening at home, yes, we are going to dive into the financials of hockey today a bit, and this is the person you want to listen to. But before we do that, I think it's very important, Larry, let's talk about your kids. Where are they on their hockey journey, and how has that been for your family? It's Our Kids Play Hockey before everything else, right?
It's been a great journey so far, and my oldest son is finishing up his freshman year at Drexel and playing ACHA Division I club hockey there.
Right down the street from me. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then my youngest son, who's finishing up his sophomore year of high school, is at Shattuck St. Mary's and in their program, and just competed for the national championship just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, for those who don't know, some pretty notable players played at Shattuck St. Mary's. You might have heard of some of them, Sidney Crosby, amongst really every other HL star that went through our high school team. No, Larry, that's awesome. And again, we heard from you in the pre-show and when I was emailing back and forth, your family is totally into the game. This is something that's really been driving your family. Your wife, who was emailing with me, said that your family has learned so much from the game. You want to just talk a little bit about that, about what hockey's meant to your family?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it and having you say that, but the game has given me so much personally that it was great when I saw my kids take an interest in it and continue and have it stick. And one of the things that I've always said is that hockey is not a sport. I mean, ultimately it is, but it's really a lifestyle that surrounds a great game. And it's afforded myself personally, and now through my kids and our family, a lot of great opportunities from the sport. And, some of them you mentioned, like playing with the Israeli national team a couple of times. And, one of the stories that I like to tell is I played at Binghamton University, which at the time was a club team. And I was walking down the streets of Lake Placid, another great hockey town, and literally walked past a guy. He kind of looked familiar to me. He was looking at me. We probably walked 6 feet past each other, turned around, and it was a guy that I played college hockey with. And it was like I seen him yesterday, and that, those are the kinds of things that you get from this lifestyle and this community. It's just it's a great sport to be around. They're great people, and it doesn't matter if you're pro or you're ACHA or club, or you're just a rec league or a men's league player. It doesn't matter. There's such a level of respect and camaraderie in the sport that it's like a lifetime, membership, if you will.
Well, I know both my co-hosts can speak to that. What's amazing, and this is what I love about podcasting and really the world today, with the world being flat. For a while there, the hockey community was just shouting for attention, right? Because it's not the biggest community in the world, but with the advent of social media and podcasts like this, we've all been able to find each other and really share stories. I think that's one of the reasons this podcast is so successful. But let's jump into the burning question here, Larry. I don't even know how to unpack this, right? Hockey is a very affordable sport. We all know that, right? It's just, you can save for it on the weekends. Very affordable. No, massive sarcasm there. It's one of the most, if not the most expensive team sport out there, right? The way I wrote this question is, what's your tips, tricks, and hacks? But I don't even know how to uncover the conversation about finances in hockey. I can tell you that Christy is towards the end of that journey of outpouring money. Yeah, you're right. Right. No, Mike's in the middle of it. I'm at the start of it. But as a wealth manager, I mean, how do you even begin to budget for this? And there are so many families out there that that struggle but make it work, right?
Yeah.
I think about them, right? Where do we even start with unpacking this?
Yeah, I mean, talking about struggle, I mean, one story that stands out to me, personally, is I was standing next to a fellow parent many years ago, and they were on my older son's team, and they were a family of 2 teachers. And he basically told me how he was looking forward to starting his summer job. And I said, oh, what's the enthusiasm for the summer job? Do you like that so much more than teaching? And he's like, no, I have to work my summer job essentially to pay off all the debt that I rang up on my credit cards throughout the year as a teacher. And my summer job basically pays those bills. And that story really still rings true in my head. And I start thinking about that. And, I think it comes down to a lot of what we do on a regular basis. And I think what happens is, with this sport, we become reactionary many times, and we basically are in a situation where our kids want an opportunity, they come and ask us for it, and we react, and we don't want to say no, instead of being a little bit proactive about it from a financial aspect. And what I mean by that is, like everything else we do in life, there should be a why behind this. Why are we getting up at 5 a.m. and going to the rink? Why are we packing up the car every weekend? Why are we doing this? Determine what that why is, and then kind of figure out what the family can afford to do that why, right? And create a budget that you can stay within over the course of the year and try to stick with it. There are going to be instances where you may have to splurge a little bit outside the lines, understood. But if you create that budget and then stay within it as far as what the family can afford, you'll be able to get enough training, you'll be able to get enough repetitions, you'll be able to, play the game you love. And I think that that's a very important piece. And I think we get wrapped up many times, thinking about the end goal as the why, which is, college scholarships or, NHL, whatever that may be, those higher aspirations. And the reality is, in most cases, that's an unattainable goal. I mean, right. It's something that you don't want to tell your kids that necessarily. You want to give them the opportunities, but that shouldn't be the why per se, right? And what you want to do, because I think it's pretty evident. If you take all this money that you're spending over these years of travel hockey and you don't put it in travel hockey and you throw it in an account, probably at even zero interest, no return on it, you'll probably have almost a full ride for your son and daughter at that point. So I think the first thing is determining that why, kind of figuring out a family budget that's going to be something that you can afford in the framework of the number of kids you have, in terms of that's not going to bankrupt the family. And then, kind of maybe adjust that on an annual basis based upon facts and circumstances, maybe based upon your kids' level of play or where they're heading in the years to come, but kind of figure that out on a year-to-year basis and stick with it.
Right. And Larry, I think parents, especially first starting out, they need to know there are a lot of hidden costs with hockey that it comes up during the season. You don't plan for it. It wasn't in the rundown in the sheet that the coach gives you, like they say, this is how much money you're going to spend throughout the year. All of a sudden things come up, gas goes up, an extra trip is in there, an extra tournament. So families have to be prepared. I try to, like, during the summer, I squirrel money aside, and I have a hockey account, because no matter what, these costs jump out at you. And you don't want to go in debt, and you don't want to put it in your credit card. So the best way to do it is budget in the summertime, set aside money. That's what I always did. Are there other ways that you can save?
Yeah, I mean, we used to double up. Basically, we used to look at the kids' tuition and basically, in our minds, more or less double up that tuition as the total cost, right? In terms of all those additional costs that you're going to incur and have. But yeah, I mean, listen, you have to figure out, just to your point, Christy, just like everything else, you got to determine what that overall budget is. And if you don't know what the overall budget is, because maybe you're a newer hockey family and don't understand those other costs that are going to come into play outside of the equipment and the tuition, then I highly suggest you kind of ask a family who's been involved in hockey for a while and ask them what is a reasonable expectation. And then, like I said, create that overall budget and then figure out how to save for that on a monthly basis. And maybe you're in a business where you're able to save more during different times of the year. So you have to maybe account for a higher level of savings during those times of years. But you certainly don't want to just be in a position where you got to put this lump sum of money aside and and do it all in one shot. Doing it over an incremental period of time is far better than doing it in one shot, for sure.
Great advice.
I'll also say, and just reading Mike's mind here, you don't always have to buy the team branded stick cover that everyone's getting towards the last month of the season. Because that reminded me of that, because during this season, again, my son's first season was last season. I was amazed how many, we got hats, we got jackets, we got this, we got that. It's like, wow, okay, I don't really want or need all of that. And then, but my teammates are getting it. Well, son, how are you going to earn it? That's something else I go into.
FOMO is a great motivator in our sport.
It really is.
It's an unbelievable motivator. I remember a story about FOMO. A friend of mine, his kids are growing up now, and he was laying on the couch on a Friday night. His kids were home, and his wife, pops up at like 6 o'clock and says, you got to get to the Friday night clinic with the kids. And my buddy's like, I got to get to what do you mean? I'm laying on the couch. The kids are relaxing. They're having a good time. What do you mean? Well, you got to get out. They got to skate. And he's like, for what? He's like, they're going to miss tonight and not make the team in the spring. He's like, I don't get it. But there's that, the sport kind of elicits that type of FOMO, fear of missing out. And I think that resonates not only for the skating component, but, to your point, those extra addeds, right? You don't need everything branded, you're not going to be dinged by the ownership group if you don't walk in with a fully branded attire to the game, So I think that's a good point as well. And, to Christy's point, those are some of those costs that sometimes we don't think about when we're looking to play the sport and with a team.
Yeah, I'm just taking notes here on what you're saying. A couple of things that stood out to me already. I'm just going to do this throughout the episode. Is I love the idea of like doubling up on your dues. I think that's actually a really great starting point. Like, I know how much my son's organizational costs are for next year. I think you're right. Doubling that is a good starting point at minimum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another
minimum.
one. Minimum. Yeah, no, minimum, big time. The other one, this is a simple one that we don't do. Ask other families.
Yeah.
That is fantastic advice. We talk a lot on the show how hockey families can be guarded against each other because like, well, I don't want to, Mike, right? I don't want to tell them what my kid's doing private lessons and what that costs because then that other kid might do private, talk about FOMO, right? But those are two great ones. The other one too is, and this kind of brings up the next question is, what are you actually investing in? I find that this is where the waters get pretty muddy sometimes. Like you should not be investing. You brought this up, Larry. It's a great point. You're not investing in hockey so your kid gets a scholarship to the NHL. You might as well buy lottery tickets if you're going to do that. I'm not insulting anyone's kid with that. Larry's right. We all know this. If your kid has that dream, pursue the dream, but understand as a parent the reality of that dream. Right? It's extremely hard. So what I look at my investment is not, okay, he's going to get a scholarship or my daughter will get a scholarship. I'm investing in helping him build life skills, become a good teammate, to be competitive, all the other stuff that comes out of the game. Keeping in mind, my son is 8.5. All right. When you're 18, this is a different conversation for sure. Right. But I think it's important from a psychological standpoint, Larry, to identify, what are you really investing in? Right. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Maybe how you've looked at that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's an evolutionary process too, right, Lee? Right. When your son or daughter's 8 years old, I think you have to take the view that 100%, this is, like you said, it's for fun. Right. My view had always been, even to today, is number one is fun. Right. Because if you don't like it, then you shouldn't be doing it. Number two is those life skills and learning how to interact with teammates and in a sport environment, right? And making sure that you understand how it is to be a teammate, right? And what it means to be a good teammate and what it takes to be an athlete, right? Because there's some regiment to it. There's a lot of discipline to it. So I think that those are a lot of the most important pieces that come from, being a hockey player. And I think, again, going back to what we said earlier, it's one of the greatest sports. So just being a part of that community is the investment. And, we've always said, my wife and I have always taken the ilk, really, we'd rather our kids be in a rink on Friday and Saturday night than being in a parking lot causing trouble and drinking or doing stupid stuff. And the sport allows us to do that. So I think that that's the kind of mentality. As your son or daughter gets older, you're going to have a better indication. And I don't mean older like 10. I mean older like 15, 16, 17, you start seeing a different view of the sport. You get a better idea of where they are, if they're still sticking with it, where their level. And that may change some of that methodology on what you're investing in. But I think those basic tenets that we just kind of laid out for 8-year-olds is really, where the lion's share of that emphasis should lie. And from my own personal experience sharing now, my freshman in college, he'll go on a Friday night, even during outside of hockey season, and he'll go to an open skate at the rink where he skates out of.
I did the same.
And you know what?
Yeah.
I'd rather him there than going out to a frat party that he'll get himself in trouble. And there are plenty of kids getting themselves in trouble. And, he likes that discipline. He doesn't want to, he likes going to the gym. So he's in that regimen still, even though he's not playing competitively year round or has to, but he's still got that regimen. So I think you got to invest in that, really, the life skills, the development, the character, because no matter what, that will help them get into college regardless. And how many kids do you focus on those, unattainable or really far reaching goals? And then you find out that the kid at 12 or 13 doesn't want to play anymore.
Right. We had a guest on like that. We had a guest on who his kid went all the way to 18 and then just did not want to do it. And I remember him saying first was, we just spent all this money. And then he kind of quickly was like, but it was worth it because of what he got. But man, it was a lot of money. I think, first off, the parents listening to the show probably share this mindset. But I also know that there's parents out there that say it, oh, that's why we're doing it. But secretly, they're going, well, I want my kid to go to the NHL. It's just about keeping perspective in how hard this journey is. We say this all the time. There's nothing wrong with having a dream. And I think sometimes pursuing a dream and not accomplishing it is actually really important, especially at a young age, because that's the way the world works, right? And if you can dust yourself up, get up again, and pursue something again, that's really how success is found. I mean, that's what the game largely did for me. The pain, there's probably more pain in the game for me than there was elation, really, when you think about it, because winning is really hard.
Right.
I want to bring Mike into the conversation. I got a question.
Mike's got to want to come into the conversation. He's been staring at me since we
I think this will draw him out. Plus, also, I'm pretty sure my college hockey playing daughter is not at the rink on Friday nights. I'm sure she's found, her and her teammates found a good Friday, which is fine if she's enjoying college life. And I get that because, I mean, come on, college, that's okay. So parents, it's not always like that.
Experience the Burns clan life comes to town. Yeah.
Well, it might be what he's telling me versus what he's doing. I don't know.
Yeah, he's going to a bar called Open
Check
Hockey.
his Instagram account. You probably will find out. He may not be at the rink on Friday nights, but anyway, Mike, and this is something I think, we've talked about before. Is a lot of parents get caught up in thinking more expensive hockey equals better hockey. Mm-hmm. Let's bust that rumor right now. Let's bust that myth.
Yeah, I mean, it's so depressing talking about trying to manage your finances for your kids to be active. I mean, it's almost absurd. I mean, it really is. I mean, to me, it's so if you wanted your son or daughter to be at the highest level of anything, this would not be the way to do it, the way we're doing it. It wouldn't be. It would be, just to Larry's point, if at the end of your athletic journey, you want to have all these life skills built in and the love of what you're doing, then you wouldn't follow the path that we all follow, because the overwhelming majority of children that quit and don't play college hockey or don't play ACHA, don't play Division I, there's many, many more of them that don't, right? So if 8% of the kids that we're talking about right now at 13 years old play some type of hockey after high school, then we're failing. We failed miserably. I mean, and so when I have to hear, it's so disheartening to hear somebody trying to, if a parent has to sit there and budget out their season and say, well, how am I going to afford to do this? At the end of the day, Larry, right? Go see your financial advisor and say, I'm going to give you the $24,000 you spent on 10U hockey last year, and I'm going to help you manage that. And guess what? I'll even tell you how to put your kid in the NHL, because the way you're doing it is wrong. And I think it's about love. It's about athleticism. It's about being in the moment. It's about, ice time. All of this stuff is a fallacy. It's all BS. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's not overwhelming. It's not. I just came from Finland. Every single kid that wants to play a sport plays a sport. Every kid. There's zero financial barrier to any child. So to hear, and Larry, you're from, you're on our side of the coast, right? So if you're in Long Island or New York or Fairfield County, it is disgustingly absurd about what athletics costs. I mean, I do lacrosse. Outrageous.
Lacrosse is similar.
Outrageous.
Yeah,
there's a field. There's a grass field,
and they don't have the
that
ice.
I've already paid for, and I'm paying for it. I don't get it. And so when we talk about, to Christy, to your point, and the only reason I was silent is because I really like hearing Larry, and his podcast is great. So, but I didn't want to go off on a soapbox. But the problem is here, we
want you to go on a soapbox. That's
we're talking about financially managing your life so that your kids can run around. Is the most. I mean, even hearing it.
No, that's a great point, Mike.
This? And so I'm like, and I think that, and there is no secret sauce. It's literally, if you ask your children, do you love hockey? I love hockey, Dad. Okay, you want to play every day? Yes, I want to play every day. Okay, there are systems out there where you can play hockey every single day for the price of a Starbucks coffee. Everyone can do it. It's we choose to put our 7 and 6 and 8-year-olds. When I see a Facebook message from somebody that's sending their kid to Quebec and they're doing a fundraising tournament or a fundraising drive, and like, we want to raise money for I go, you want to raise money for your kid to play in the Quebec tournament? Screw you. Like, what are you crazy? That's $8,000 for you to go on an exclusive event. Don't tell me you can't afford it. Tell me you're choosing. And Larry, you do this all the time, right? when people say I can't afford that, Larry, how could you tell me? And I was an admissions director for a number of years at a prep school, and I would have people every day. My financial advisor says I need financial aid. Great. What do you need? Well, it's really hard for us to afford to go to the school. How much is the school? Let's make believe it's a local high school, right, in Long Island. It's $14,000 a year. Oh, really? Well, can I get financial aid? And then aren't you looking at these people's financials and go, well, let me ask them. You have a boat on the Long Island Sound. You just drove up here in a Range Rover. You're choosing that where you want to spend your money, right? So I think we can all do a much better job. And unfortunately, to Larry's point, and Christy and Lee, you've seen this just in your life of hockey. Nobody realizes it. If you talk to every parent of a 19, 20-year-old, they all say the same thing. We all sound the same. It's the parent of the 5-year-old that just says, oh, well, my kid's not that kid. I hear you, Mike. I understand it, but that's all those other kids. That's just not my kid. And that's our problem. Our problem is we've lost, forget about perspective. We've lost all reality in the fact that if our children's physical and mental health, if our number one thing was to give them the greatest chance to achieve all these goals, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now. It's nuts. It really is nuts. And I think
I don't disagree with you. I think that the system is set up for this. And listen, as somebody who grew up playing hockey and you guys as well, it really, there hasn't been any moving of the needle either. Right. So, it's one of those sports that, I agree with you, but we're choosing to do this. Unfortunately, I think there are families that do get involved with the sport, not realizing and are naive about the cost associated with it and kind of get wrapped up on the hamster wheel without knowing. I got into this full, eyes wide open. I knew what I was getting into. I have people that ask me all the time about Shattuck, right? How did you get your son in there? I'm like, get my son in there. I'm like, I didn't do anything. I said, my son sent the athletic director an email, and that started off. I didn't do anything. And then they're like, oh, you must be getting a lot of financial aid because he's a decent player. I'm like, financial aid is for financial aid. They don't give any merit. Everybody pays the same tuition. And they're like, oh, that's a steep tuition. I said, well, when I started adding in what I was paying on Long Island to play tier 1 hockey and all the extras, the physical therapy and the skates, and you start adding in all the travel, the hotels, I'm like, it's basically the same. And he's getting a much better education in the process. So, but to your point, Mike, that's crazy that I even rationalize that way, right? It shouldn't even be like that.
You're doing your ROI. You're saying, okay, listen, I say this all the time. I tell parents every day that say they can't afford something. I said, I joke around with a lot of the groups that I work with, especially youth hockey organizations, because it's our fault. It's USA Hockey, it's the governing body, it's the associations, it's the leagues. It's our fault. It's we're creating an environment where we're building less hockey players. All I hear from USA Hockey, we got to grow the sport. We want to grow. You're actually diminishing the opportunity for more kids every day because of what you allow to happen. You don't have to be a part of an organization, but if you're going to be a part of an organization, you should be a part of an organization that's advocating for the child, not for their pocketbook. And you see this in leagues everywhere, right? Why are we paying this? And to your point, if I took one weekend tournament, I say this to parents all the time, and I joke around, some people are using abacuses. I like to use a Texas Instrument, calculator. I said, I don't know what you're using to do your math, but your math sucks. Like, you tell me what, 15, and Larry, you could tell me probably off the top of your head, 15 kids, a weekend hockey tournament going to Buffalo, New York. What's that costing a team to do that? $20,000, $16,000?
Easily.
Right. So to me, I'm like, well, if I had a financial advisor, I'd be like, what can you give me for this $15,000 that I'm going to give you back? And you probably come like, I could do a lot of things with that. And I think, and that's the way none of us look at this. So, I go up to Buffalo, New York to play the Long Island Gulls, the Long Island Royals, and the Westchester Vipers. I go, what the hell am I doing here? I just traveled 9 hours to play 5 teams that are 5 minutes from my rink. So I think it's just all of us. And you speak about this actually with a lot of your guests on your podcast, which I love, is perspective, is reality. But I think what we don't do enough is we don't push back on the fact that hockey is not expensive. You don't have to dedicate crazy hours anymore. Like the getting up at 5 a.m. stuff just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, there's 27 rinks on Long Island, or there, in my from where my house
for
is.
Me last year,
6...
Mike, I gotta say that.
What's that?
It existed for me last season. I can.
Well, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have
I know.
to.
Like, I agree.
I think it's crazy when people build hockey programs, and I did this for a long time up around here. You want to build a new hockey program. Why would you give your worst time to your newest kids? Like if this is a recruiting video for parents, don't share it. You're never gonna. I mean, I said, oh, guess what? Your kid's gonna play hockey. He's gonna get up at 4:30 in the morning, and then you'll hear the purists. Well, you gotta, strive to understand.
You gotta walk uphill both ways in the snow like I did.
Right.
I'm like, people don't want to do it. That's why nobody's playing the sport. If you look at the numbers, our sport is dying every day, and it's dying because of the way we're allowing the sport to go.
And Mike, you know the most dangerous phrase in the English language, right? This is the way we've always done it.
Right.
That is the most dangerous phrase. The other thing too is, and you make a good point, Mike. It's, I look at not just USA Hockey, but they've made it easier for you to get in the game from a cost perspective. You can get into the game for $150 now, but the problem is, okay, I got him in the game, and then it's like, okay, your season dues are for the next season. It's like, I can't afford that. So it
went from free to $4,000.
Yeah,
I don't understand how that's even a business model.
And
well, you look at the NHL teams that are doing these like learn to skate programs where you get outfitted for free, and we walk through the rink and see people dressing their kids for the first, second, third time, and we're looking at them do you really have an idea of what you're getting into? This is not costing you anything, but what's on the other side of this thing? And families don't understand. They don't know.
Well, and that's part of the thing that bothers me. Let me lead into another question here, Larry, because I wrote this down. This is a little scoop for everybody. Christy and Mike don't know this, and our producer Caitlin doesn't. This was a lesson for me in life that I think came actually a little too late. I remember when I was in college, I played college hockey, and Christy, this is going to shock you, but I failed a class in college. All right, I failed a class. I got an F, big F. I won't make excuses. I will tell you that I took the course again and aced it. That's the end of the story. But I remember, this is where the story comes in. I called my father because I was really upset, and I didn't think I deserved it. I felt bad because I was very blessed to be in a position where my college was being paid for. And I said, look, Dad, I want to pay for this class that I failed, right? And I said, what does it cost? And I'm thinking a couple $100, right? And he told me what it cost for one class, and I was silent. I never realized what it was costing, right? And here's the thing, never thought to ask. I was a teenager, right? It's just not in my mind. It's just, I'm doing this really fun thing, and I'm getting a nice ride for it. What age is it appropriate, Larry, do you think, to start having that conversation with your kids? Because I think something that my parents should have done, not that this was a mistake, was I think when I was 15, they should have sat me down and said, look, this is what it costs for you to play hockey this year. You don't owe us anything, but I want you to see what it costs. I want you to help us budget, maybe put some of your own chore money into things. Like maybe we'll have a little fund here for sticks and skates where, you have to pay 20% of it. I think we don't do enough at all. This is more on a human level, just to teach budgeting, to teach financial awareness, to teach financial health. We wait till we're in debt to do that. So at what age do you think that a father, a mother, and a son or a daughter should sit down and say, hey, let's look at the financials. Let me teach you some basic financial awareness.
Yeah, I think the earlier the better, and the conversation just changes. I mean, you could start with your 8-year-old and kind of give them an indication. You don't have to go doing budgeting with the 8-year-old, but they should have an understanding of what mom, dad, and the family is putting behind them for this effort. And, we had situations, to your point earlier, where our kids used to come and they wanted the branded jacket or the branded this. And we would say, hey, holidays are coming up, ask for it for your holiday gift in lieu of getting something else. Instead of getting an Xbox, if you want that jacket, ask grandma, pop, or your aunt or uncle, let them get it. So we had those conversations very early on, all throughout, even when, my kids went to college, and were continuing to play. They understood, my older son went to a college, at a higher price point than we were expecting as a family, but, he understood that. And there were
Drexel will do that
expectations
to you.
from, yeah, there were expectations. Listen, he went out and got himself the highest presidential scholarship he could get
fantastic.
from Drexel. He even, and I heard him do it, he called the school and called the aid department and tried to get them to give him another 5 or 10,000. He wasn't successful. And then, my younger son also, he knows what Shattuck costs and he understands it. And, we had certain expectations from him, grade wise and hockey wise, because we said, if those two things are not going to happen, then there's no reason to go there. So I think, to your question, Lee, the earlier the better you start having those conversations, and you don't have to do a full undress where the kid knows where every dollar and cent is going. But there has to be buy-in, that they understand what the cost is. We used to show our kids the tuition. We used to show them what the hotels cost.
Yeah, and so a lot of parents don't do that. Now, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to say that, because I think a lot of parents, Mike, this is to your point, they feel like, well, I have to shoulder this burden. And Mike, to your point, it shouldn't be a burden, right? But Larry, here's the thing: it's like,
no, but things cost money. I mean, it's just like bringing your kids to the grocery store. Like I had my 9-year-old at the counter with me at the Lacrosse Unlimited the other day, and we got a mouth guard and some grip tape and something, and it seems like it came out to like $37.95 or something. And he was there when the guy ran it, like, oh, $37.95. He's like, he goes, that's expensive. Like he thinks $37.99 is like $700, but it doesn't matter. Like he's like,
okay.
That's expensive. I go, yeah, it's expensive. I said, and I would say the same thing to, your son that's your senior hockey goalie, and he takes his brand new true, AX9 and smacks it over the back of the net after a bad goal. You're like, you just cost me out. I think, Larry, I don't know if I need to go over tuition with the kids, but there is value, right, in equipment. And the fact is, listen, you want to snap your stick on the bench, forget about the money. It's just the respect of the fact that somebody had to work to get that piece of equipment to you.
So Mike and Larry, I want to hear your thoughts on this too. With my 8-year-old, we wanted to just build the awareness of, look, things cost money. Money has to be earned through work or through chores. And that's how the system works. It's not, we just have unlimited money for you to spend. And I knew we were doing something right when my son said, I have $10 that I earned and I want to buy this. And I explained to him that if you buy this, the money disappears. And you have to, and like
my son's been using the same $20 for 5 months. I'll pay for that. I'll pay for that Disney movie. I'll go. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, right. And he'll give you the money, and then the money goes back in the piggy bank, and then you go back in. But it's just like, but there has to be some value, right?
Well, I just wanted to create an awareness of like, look, things are not free, and you have to earn things. You have to work to earn money, and you can spend your money on the things that you want. I don't think a lot of people do that. I think it's just like, I'm gifting hockey to you because I'm a great parent, and it's. Again, we talked about, the lessons. What are you investing in?
Value it.
Yeah, you have to teach the value. Again, we talked about shouldering the burden.
And I
teach your kids financial
I gotta jump
stuff.
in here.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Oh, a great way to get the kids involved in helping pay for the cost for hockey is in the beginning of the year when you have your fundraisers. Let's say you get you're doing the candy bar fundraiser, you're doing bottle and can. Parents, don't take those candy bars to work. You call the mall, you call the grocery store and say, hey, can we set up a table outside? The kids are selling, not the parents. Make the kids go and collect all the bottles and cans in the neighborhoods. Make the kids sell the candy bars. Let them do the work. Or host, they were waiters and waitresses at a restaurant who let them take a percentage of the income that night. They took over the restaurant. So whatever we made that night, they did it. We just sat back, watched as parents, let kids go to town.
Yeah, I mean, Christy, if we're just going to do that and sell it ourselves, I don't know about you, but my time is pretty valuable. I'd rather just take the money out of my pocket and throw it in there, and not have to bother other people to buy the stuff. So I agree. Listen, my kids have sold raffle tickets. They've sold Apple earbuds, for hockey teams, and we do make them kind of shoulder some of that responsibility because I think it's important. And listen, every kid's different, but I think, to your comment, Lee, for a parent to say, hey, my kid's entitled to this, they're not entitled to know. I think you lose part of that valuable lesson of the sport, which is, hey, this is an expensive sport. And to Mike's point, it shouldn't be, but it is. And until that changes, you have to understand what the family's giving up. And, there were times, for example, where we went up to our, a place in Lake Placid to spend a night instead of a family vacation or something like that, because it was less expensive. So there were some give ups on their end, right? In terms of, hey, maybe we don't go on a big family vacation this year because we've gone away on, maybe 50 mini vacations from all the away games that we had. So, I think having that conversation and having them understand that there's sometimes that give and take. Also, maybe you're not going to Disney World this year or wherever amusement park because we've done this kind of along the way. So, it's age specific, but I don't think I think parents lose out on that valuable lesson if they don't use it as a teaching tool.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify something too on my end that I don't think the sport isn't expensive and shouldn't be expensive, because it should be. If you're choosing to do the things that some of us do for hockey, listen, I like, if I like to run, I can certainly find ways to go running for free. But if I want to go to every marathon around the country, it's going to cost me money, right? If I'm going to be a specialist or go above and beyond what other people do in their sport, there is a price tag. I get all that. What I'm saying is none of us get the opportunity, or, none of us, when we get into something new, understand that the alternatives are out there that still can produce what we want in the end. And right. I think that's really the difference is we don't do a great job in any sport, I don't think, of educating, I watched this Ranger Rookie League, and I know, Larry, you're involved with, and actually you're still involved with the Conic Hockey Foundation and in places like this, right? And we've interviewed Troy and just knowing like what they do for outreach, and there's all these other opportunities still for outreach and for growing the game and bringing kids into the sport. But what we don't do is we don't educate and give opportunity to all these, there's because the numbers are bigger at the rec level than they are at the pro level. There's many. So if all our goals, if I'm a hockey rink owner and my goal is to have a filled rink, then my goal should be to get as many bad hockey players and recreational players into my rink as possible, right? Because their money is the same as this guy's money. Like, it's just the same. And right. Actually, I'd rather spend money in my rink than spend it at Mobile, the Marriott and Delta. Like, to me, there's just other options, and we talk about that all the time on this podcast. That there's so many more out there than just saying I've got to go to the big city shootout in Chicago and the Nashville Smashville tournament with my 7-year-old. To me, it just doesn't.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, a rink's ideal client is somebody who starts out at Mites and goes through men's league, never goes to college, right? If
you play in a men's league game in a rink that you started in, you should actually get a discount. There should be some kind of
legacy discount.
You have gone cradle to grave in my rink. I mean, Larry does this really cool thing, which is great. He's like, "What rink is Larry at? Is that the name? What rink is Larry at?" And he does this thing on social media, which I love. And because he's like, "Damn it, I'm tweeting all my friends. Like, what rink is this? What rink is this?" And sometimes it's pretty obvious, but sometimes it's funny. It's like, well, yeah. I mean, to be in all these different rinks, you come up with a little fun thing to do, and you're like, I am in every goddamn rink there is. This is crazy.
Well, I
will tell you, this isn't financially motivated, but when as my boys were going through the system and growing up, a lot of times, come like June, end of May, they stopped playing. Not because USA Hockey kind of had this idea that you should stop, but we found that if they stopped for a month or two, they would and they were really hungry come August, right? They were like, man, I haven't been on the ice for 8 weeks. They were really, really hungry. And people used to come up to me, "Oh, you're not going to Lobster Fest or this fest or that fest." And they're like,
"Yeah, but Larry, talk a little bit about the mental part of that, though, because I think we haven't gotten to that. And I know, Lee, I'm sure you have a question teed up, and I apologize.
You can do it. No, go for it, Mike. It's a team effort here.
Mental. That's not just physical. That's not just like, I used to love that. I mean, by August when I was a kid, I was like dying to get in the rink. Yes. Like I'm like I want to go kill somebody. Like, this is gonna be fun. Like, I'm gonna start skating. I'm gonna start moving. And, but I started later in life, but I see that in my own kids. It's like anything else. If you can take something away, my little guy loves key lime pie, loves it. We don't have key lime pie at the house. We go have key lime pie when we go to Florida. So it's like, oh my God, we're going to Florida. We're getting key lime pie. Like, it's like the whole vacation is built around him getting this special treat. And I think if we could do that with sports,
Christy, now we know what to get Mike for Christmas. By the way, let's note that down right now.
I'm a marzipan guy, but I think if it's, but to your point, Larry, what did that do? What do you think, from your own anecdotal experience, what did that do for your kids when they got away and you could see that hunger even mentally for them.
Oh, listen, Mike, forget about my kids. What about me? For me, I needed the mental break, being away every weekend.
I agree with that 100%.
For me as a parent, it was a tremendous mental relief and break to be able to, take those several weeks off. And for the kids, also, right. They understood that they were kids. They were to go out and do other things. They started taking up golf and tennis and other things. And, you need to have that mental break, and relax. I mean, if you think about it as an adult, right? We think about it often. We're under a lot of stress at times, working, maybe you're working 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever it may be. Think about how you feel at the end of doing that for 3 or 4 weeks, and this is really no different. Maybe they're not working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours, but there's a mental strain and toll. There's a physical one too, for being in that regimen and consistently being on in terms of being willing to play, being willing to practice and learn. And there's a toll there. And I think we don't, we talk about, rest for the body, but we don't talk a lot about the rest for the mind. Right. And the mind, as we've seen in recent years, especially with, everything from pro down to high school athletes who are running into problematic situations, the mental part of the game and taking that mental decompression is just as important as taking that time off physically.
Yeah, Larry, let me jump into that
financially too. We'll circle back to
100%.
that.
Yes.
We will.
Not forget about that. That lobster fest can cost a lot of money,
especially if you do it more than once a year.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, we're talking about the money and what I will tell you, I've created some unbelievably great memories as a result of a lot of those trips, right? That I would never give up in a million years. But I also knew what I was getting into in advance and kind of had the ability to plan it out from a financial standpoint. It's those people that don't have that or kind of just get wrapped in and go that, ultimately I find is problematic.
Well,
right. And I'd say, and that's so true. Our Lake Placid trips, I would never in a million years trade those memories. They're just so special. And we talk about them to this day. The kids have some of the best memories, and they develop some incredible friendships for a lifetime too. And sometimes you bond a little bit better on those types of trips as well.
Well, you can't put a value on that. That's the other thing too. That's part of the monetary stuff. You can't put a value on, Christy, as you're saying. I remember my Lake Placid trip. Like, that was a big moment for me in my youth, my teenage years. The other thing, I just want to reiterate what you said there, Larry, whether it's podcasts or a pandemic, you got to take a break when you can. I realize this, for those who don't know, I did about 200 podcasts last year. And best advice I got was a friend said, you need to take a break. Right. And I'm like, no, I'm motoring, I'm doing it. I took a 2-week break. I was like, man, I really needed that break. I didn't realize how much I needed that break. Right. And I knew after my son's season, as you said, Larry, I knew I needed a break. And I can already hear, Mike, to your point, my kids are already saying, hey, when are we going to go on the ice again? I'm like, good. That's what I want to start hearing now. A couple other notes I have here. Larry, I don't know what it is about you, but since you're a financial guy, we need to get a swear jar for Mike for the first time ever. How much would you reckon? No, Mike, I'm just kidding you.
I even have, I had no hockey this weekend. So I think
get it out now, brother. That's what you got to do. I want to say too,
I apologize, Caitlin, in advance.
That's all right. I think about the entry point. Look, I started this game with a $15 Milex stick on the streets of Havertown, Pennsylvania. And that's how I did it for 2 or 3 years before I even stepped on the ice. So Mike, to your point, we talk about getting sticks in hands. Look, great hockey players are great overall athletes. In fact, most pro athletes, we've said this many times, could be pro at another sport. That's how athletic they are. So if you are serious about making a great athlete, you have to play other sports. You have to do it. There's unlimited scientific research on this. All right. And we talk about this from a money standpoint that I got to keep paying. He won't be a good hockey player. I got to keep paying. Put him in soccer, put her in soccer. Put them in tennis, golf, baseball. And I know a lot of parents listening do this, right? Because we get emails all the time. It is so important. Just like culturally, you need to be well-rounded athletically. And again, look, the kid doesn't really, I won't say they don't care, but they're going to have fun. And that's the key. I think I talked about this once before, they did this experiment with babies where they put an expensive toy in front of the baby and like a plastic bottle full of rice. And the kid always picked the plastic bottle full of rice because they don't know that the other one's expensive.
Yeah, but wasn't that always the Christmas like time?
Right.
You get the nice big thing and your kid's playing with the box for 5 hours.
Right.
Like, no, what about playing with the thing that's in the box? I mean, what are you crazy?
Right.
But it's the same thing. It's just they'll find, it's like anything else. And I love that about any sport is, and I use this analogy a lot in my coaching education programs, that you'll never hear a kid at a playground asking mom or dad when it's almost over. Like you'll never hear like, hey, are we almost done swinging on these bars here? Or can we, I have enough of this being creative and playing, soldier.
I don't want to have fun anymore.
Yeah. It never ends. They could play and play and play and play. And that's the kind of, environment we got to create for our kids in any sport. I'm
going to say it again. I had just as much fun, if not a lot of times more fun, just playing roller hockey on my street growing up. And again, there are much more distractions today. You guys know this. I am not against gaming. I'm not against it. I'm against doing it 24 hours a day. All right. But it's just, coming back to the financial aspect of this, there is an affordable way to do this. It doesn't break your bank. It keeps your kids sane, mentally sane. There is far too much pressure in this game to make a team. And like I've said this on previous episodes, especially my kid who's a little different when you're older. I didn't care what team he made. I just want to have a good coach. I want to have good coaching where he can develop and have a good time. That is all I care about. And I've had people come up to me and say, oh, he didn't make this team. And I'm like, I don't care what team. I really mean that, people. It's not a status thing for me that I get to say he made this team at 8, which no one's ever going to ask him about the rest of his life, by the way. Right. I just want him to develop and have a good time. The same thing for my daughter. So Larry, let's just, because I do want to talk about the mental stuff for a few minutes, but bringing it back to the financial aspect of this, is there any other things that we missed? Is there any other advice that you have? I think we covered some really great points today, just about, basic financial kind of literacy. But where else do you think we need to go with this?
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing I would say to you is, and I think you brought up a great point there, Lee, is there is a team for everybody. Right. There's an opportunity to play everywhere. Don't get wrapped up that it's got to be AAA or AA or rec league, wherever, be realistic about where your kid fits and what the family can afford, and figure out where the best coaching is going to be there. I mean, my son, my younger son, who's at Shattuck right now, a couple of years ago had a bad experience with a coach and didn't make a team. He was gonna, or wasn't invited back to a team because he was told he wasn't good enough for that team. Decided to use that as an opportunity to go play from AAA to AA, had one of the best years of his life, won a New York State championship that year, and then went back in the middle of that year, decided to go back to AAA and go play for a coach that he really wanted to, and we as a family really enjoyed. And and people used to say to me, oh, you're letting him play AA? I'm like, what are you talking about? He asked to play, he wanted to, so I think don't get wrapped up in that. There's a place for everybody. There's a price point for everybody. And, just do it more intentionally. Don't get wrapped up into it.
Larry, let me ask you this. Were you more proud of him when he was on the AAA team and struggling, or the way he reacted to that situation as a parent?
Oh, 100% was the way that he made the decision and then went to that team and said, listen, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to have a good year. And, just handling that adversity to me was more important than, having a bad situation on another team. 100%. It built him to who he is today, and, added to his character and his personality and him as a human being.
And I'm going to vault on that. If there's anything that I've learned over the last 2 years, and this is being recorded in Q2 2022, it's that humans, I'm talking about the pandemic, are more resilient than anyone realized, but also ill-equipped to deal with adversity, right? The whole thing with the pandemic, and I'm not talking about loss, and God bless any of you out there that have lost someone during the pandemic, but our ability to get adversity and deal with it is something we mentally need to get better at. All right. Now, with that said, I think one of the biggest things that we don't talk about the pandemic is how our species, human beings, pivoted, found a way through it. When we did it, right? We're doing it, right? Science and medicine and all of us, we made it through this thing. We changed a lot about our lives. We don't celebrate that enough. It's an incredible thing that our species did globally, right? but mentally, there was a lot of things uncovered here. And I know mental fitness, mental awareness is something you're really passionate about. So just kind of rounding out this episode, I do want to talk about this because there's a massive stigma surrounding mental fitness and mental health really globally. It's not just in this country, right? And you've dedicated a lot of time to that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that, especially with suicide prevention, and then maybe how that's affected your parenting or your experience in high pressure sports.
Yeah. So, again, I lost my brother-in-law in 2004 to suicide. He suffered from bipolar disorder, was a physically fit guy, 27 years old, went to the gym every day. And he just had a disorder of his brain that ultimately, took his life. And, that's something that has always, knowing that happened back in 2004, my oldest son was about 18 months old when we lost him. My youngest son never even met his uncle. So it was something that was very important to us, and we were always very mindful of it in a couple of ways. And, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a person who's a mental health advocate, I guess you could say. And there are some things that I think parents should be aware of and look out for. Number one is, from an environment that they're in. Again, to your point, Lee, we were never concerned with cost or where or what team or what level. We're always concerned with, who are we putting my son in a room with? Do we feel comfortable with them in that experience? Because if not, I don't care if they were an ex-NHLer at the highest level, they were not going to play for that team, or the best skills coach, they were not going to go play for that team. So we always were aware of that. And then how are they conveying the message when they win, lose, or develop the kids? Because you got to think about it. Our children are spending a lot of time with these role models, and they are very impressionable upon our kids. So I think as parents, we have to be aware of who we're putting our son or daughter or children in a room with. And it's very important. And we also have to be mindful of, the pressure that's on them, right? Pressure in terms of school, pressure that we're putting on them with sport. So it's very important to have that mental aspect. And all along the lines from my kids when they were very young, we were always very forthright with them. And, we didn't tell them that my brother-in-law died by suicide initially, but it was, hey, Uncle Keith had a disease of the brain, which he ultimately died from. And then as they got older, more and more of the story came to light, and they understood that. So mental health has always been something that's important to them, and they've always realized and recognized that. And we've always tried to put them in conjunction with people that were mindful of that and understood that and would be able to help their mental state and not tear it down. And I think that this is more important than ever. I mean, in the last several weeks alone, we've seen a couple of lacrosse and soccer players die by suicide at the college level. There was recently one of the college soccer players wrote an article, I forget if it was for the Tribune, about her experiences and her taking a step away from the game for a while for her own mental health. It's important because, listen, if your children are not mentally healthy, forget about everything. None of this matters. And none of what we just spoke about matters. So it's very important that we have to stay in tune to that. And, to what you said about the stigma, yeah, stigma's still there 100%. But I will tell you this, as opposed to where we were 14, 15, 17 years ago when my brother-in-law passed, we're far along from where we were back then. We're still not there yet. And, we've had some great folks on our show, Eric Cusin. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He has a podcast called We're All a Little Crazy, which he speaks with Theo Fleury is on his board from the NHL, talking about mental health, massive advocate, and Theo talks about being in his car with a loaded gun in his hand. And, he didn't want to die because it was over. He was exhausted. He just wanted to rest. And we can't let our kids get to that level. So number one is be mindful of who you're putting your kids in a room with. Right. Make sure it's somebody you're comfortable with. And if something's not right, make sure you address it. Number two, keep an eye on your kids and understand when they're exhausted, maybe it's not that they don't want to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get in the car for 2 hours. Maybe there's something else going on there. And, just be open to have those conversations with the kids so they can express to you if they are having some mental, drainings or troubles, because that conversation can ultimately save their life and a lot of strife for you and your family. So I think it's a very important piece, and we have to pay as much, if not more, attention to that than the physical side of things.
Yeah, Larry, that was very well put. And I'll tell you too, that one of the things we say, and I'm a mental fitness advocate as well, is that I say mental fitness because everybody knows what physical fitness is. Everybody knows that. Right. Your brain is very similar. What are you doing for the fitness of your mind? You'll go to the gym every day. You'll work on your body every day, but we do maybe 2% of that for our mind. And it really needs to be more like 50-50, where I say 100% and 100%. And as you said too, it is changing. I'm seeing this in my own coaching because the work that I do for teams is being much more widely accepted. And really, I'm at the first point of my career, Mike and Christy, that I haven't talked to you guys about this, that I'm being asked in game situations, what's the mental approach to this situation? I've never been asked that before. I've always thought about it, but I'm being asked that by tactical people and head coaches now. So it's going the right direction, but there is a lot of ground to make up here. And Larry, we need people like you, and I know Mike and Christy are advocates of this as well, to continue push this forward. So I want to thank you for your work in that. I'm sorry about the loss of your brother, obviously, and I'm inspired that you found strength in that situation to do what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we didn't want him to go quietly. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Christy and Mike, I'm going to wrap this up unless you have any other questions, because this could go for another 6 hours.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Wow. I mean, we went in all different kinds of directions, but there were so much important topics that we touched upon. And I hope, especially the younger parents who are just getting on board with hockey, you can learn a lot from this episode.
I sure did.
Thanks for being on, Larry, and certainly enjoy following you. And I'm sure you could give your Instagram and Twitter information out. But it's really fun to kind of see what you're doing and around the rinks in the country and following your kids. But I think more importantly, just understanding that you certainly can help so many different people, meld these two worlds together, which is great.
I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Yeah. And I'll say this. I know for you listening at home, many of you probably have, I've got a question I want to ask. Well, look, you can email us at team@ourkidsplayhockey.com if you have a question you want to ask broadly. But Larry, I would like to give the audience the opportunity to contact you as well, because I know financials can be a personal thing. So where can people follow you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so on every social media platform except for Instagram, I'm Lawrence Sprung, LAWRENCE_Sprung. And on Instagram, I'm Larry Sprung. So if you ever have a question, you could shoot me a message there. I'd be happy to connect with you. Every month, like Mike said, I run a Guess What Rink Larry's At, where I put up a 1-minute clip from a rink I'm at, you guess, and we pick a winner after a week and donate $100 to their charity of choice. So if you get the rink right and tag your charity, you might even raise some money for your charitable cause, whatever that may be. So thanks for that plug, Mike. Appreciate it.
No, I've loved
it's almost as big as the Butchergross challenge, but he's getting there. So it's good.
Yeah, one day at a time. Well, Larry, this has been fantastic, and I appreciate coming on. This might be one of those ones we have to do a part 2, depending on how big the mailbag gets. But I appreciate you coming on, and no, it's our pleasure and having this. And Christy, to your point, that's why I love this show, because we go so many different directions, and these are the conversations that hockey families need to be having, and that's why we created the podcast. I want to thank all you listening once again. This podcast has grown. We are in the top 30 regularly in hockey now, which is incredible. We're infiltrating the NHL market. So I think it's fantastic that you're finding value in this, and we're all humbled that you're letting us lead you on that journey. But with that said, that's going to do it for this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Again, you can see and listen to all of our episodes at ourkidsplayhockey.com, wherever podcasts can be heard. So for Larry Sprung, Mike Benelli, and Christy Casciano Burns, I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you in the next edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Have a great day, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.